Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Speaking with the Speaker. Now, as a little bit of house cleaning is on my channel, I wanted to make everybody aware, if they weren't already, because it just basically happened yesterday, that the name of my channel, if you haven't noticed, has changed. It is now going to be called simply The Speaker. I've noticed over time that that's what people tend to call me anyway. Even though I call myself Speaker for the Dead, it's just simpler, easier for people to say, hey Speaker, hey Brian the Speaker, or just whatever. So to make things simpler, that's what I'm going to change my name to. Also, I see that it will maybe help clear up some confusion as to what my channel is about. A lot of people don't understand the reference of the Speaker for the Dead. They don't know who he was or what I'm referencing there, and it seems to confuse a lot of people and throw them off. They come thinking I'm some kind of goth channel because I don't understand that it's a kind of an obscure reference to a series of books by Orson Scott Card. The best well-known one being Ender's Game. Speaker for the Dead is actually the book that comes after Ender's Game. But Speaker for the Dead is what he is. Ender, or Andrew Wiggin in the book, is based on, or is called the Speaker for the Dead. Basically, he spawns a pseudo-religion based on what he does for his life's calling after the things that happen in the first novel, and what carries on from those events. So, just to let everybody know, that is the new title for the channel, and that will be what it is going forward. So not a huge change, just a small one, and some of the reasons behind that. Now, to make good on the promise that I made last week, this will be an anime review, and we are going to be discussing the great anime known as Parasyte. Now, if you have not seen this anime, I feel really bad for you. Now, it is truly a fantastic anime, and one that I'd seen it come up, I'd seen it pop up multiple times on multiple different platforms. It is fairly easy to find. I found it on Netflix, but I believe it's also on Hulu, and it might be on a couple of others. So it's out there and fairly easy to find. But it is really just a good all-around anime. It has elements for just about anybody. It has horror elements to it. It gets kind of bloody and gruesome, but it's not so overly graphic as to be off-putting. Some of the episodes are a little heavy on the violence and stuff, but there's a very legitimate reason for this. This is Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets The Host, if you've ever read the book The Host by Stephanie Meyer. Just a much more violent version of the book. So it is basically, and if you haven't seen it, you may want to switch away, go watch it, and then come back, because I will be talking spoilers in this. I'm going to give a full review of this anime. But even if you haven't seen it, you could watch this, and seeing it is different than hearing somebody talk about it. So please go check this anime out. You will not be sorry. If you like horror, kind of action, intrigue, that kind of, it's definitely more of an adult type anime, not for kids. Young adults and adults, I would say, is who this is primarily aimed at. But it starts out with a kid. He's in the third year of high school, which for the Japanese seems to be the final year of their high school experience. And it centers around the character of Suzuki Imazu. Sorry, I apologize, I can't say his name. Izuchi. Yeah. Sendichi Imazuchi. So, yeah. takes me a little while, especially when I watched this series last week again to prepare for this, and even hearing it all week, I'll struggle with some of the pronunciations if I haven't heard them for a while. It also has a girl, his love interest in this particular series is Satomi Mirano, and also kind of a secondary love interest is Kana Kishimiya. And then there's a lot of other characters throughout this, but it really centers very much around Shinichi, and also a character we come to know as Miki. So what happens to this kid is that he wakes up from a nightmare where he's basically had a worm or insect-looking thing try and burrow into his body, which it kind of succeeds, and so he wakes up in this panic, and then it goes on, and from there we learn that it ends up that it wasn't really a dream. He remembers what really happened, and it kind of goes on from there. And I'm being specifically vague so that I'm not giving too much away of the first couple of episodes. But what ends up happening is that this Parasyte, which is the name for the reason for the name of the anime, is not the only one of its kind. It's basically a small invasion of the body snatchers kind of story, where this parasite infiltrates his body and is unable to reach its goal, which is to take over and control his brain, thereby gaining control of his entire body, because he wakes up in the middle of the process and uses his headphones cord. The insect burrows into his hand and is slowly making its way up his arm, and he's able to stop it with his headphones cord by basically creating a tourniquet, stopping it from getting farther. He wakes up screaming. His parents come rushing in. They're like, "Are you on drugs?" Because like now it's gone. They can't see anything. All they can see is him sitting on the floor trying to cut his arm off, cut circulation to his arm off with his headset with like a cord like this, which I thought was clever how they used the headphones. But it is really just, and then that's the jump off point for this series. And we come to find out that this parasite has taken over his arm. Well, it consumes his arm and essentially mimics his arm and becomes his arm, his right hand. And it starts to try and communicate with him and learn the language. And it has, like, it will form eyeballs and mouths on his hand to try and speak to it and stuff. And it is very elastic. Like what was once his arm is very much an elastic thing. It can stretch and go way beyond and has way more abilities now that the parasite has taken over than it did before. And he has to come to terms with this and try and figure out whether he should go to the authorities and what will happen if he does. And will he become a lab rat for the rest of his life? And trying to figure out why this parasite has done this and why they've come and where they came from. And that's the thing I really love about this particular story, is they leave it completely ambiguous. You never really find out why the parasites came. There's different speculations. They kind of open it up, and it becomes a very philosophical discussion of, is this a way was this something that came from the earth attempting to whittle down the human race, to prevent them from being in a position to destroy the planet? Was this something that they were sent from outer space? Or are they an alien race that came to invade? But not only does he not know, the parasite doesn't know. They have no memory of why they're there, or what their purpose was. And so these parasites are trying to find their purpose. Now he finds very quickly that most of these parasites have taken over the brains of other human beings. Some of them are like him and have failed in taking over the entire human being and have only taken over parts of them. There's some that we find that end up having taken over animals, unable to find a human host, and there's problems that come about from that and stuff. But these aliens basically become human being hunters. That's their first initial drive upon taking over human hosts, is to hunt other human beings, particularly to eat their brains, eat their heads and stuff for nourishment, but to eat their body in part or total, as part of their survival process. And they are quite terrifying in how they look. They can basically split their heads open and take huge bites, and they can transform their bodies into metal type. Like they can make their bodies as dense or as flexible as they want. Basically, they could turn their arms into stabbing weapons. If you think the Terminator from Terminator Judgment Day, the liquid metal Terminator, something along that line. They don't, however, take over the entire human body. Most of them take over the head, and then just that's where they reside. They control the head. The rest of the body is still human, and they use that. So then that's where the story goes on. Now this goes on, and there is, I mean, it is just really a great kind of original take on this particular genre. This has been done many times in many different ways, but never quite like this. It takes the human beings quite a long time to figure out that there is something major going on amongst them. At first, they think it's just a slate of serial killers. But this is not just happening in Japan where the story takes place. It is happening all over the world. And everybody's trying to figure out what is happening. Why it seems like there's either a serial killer or a group of serial killers that have spread out across the globe that are killing people in fairly large numbers. But the parasites are not widespread. There's maybe one in several thousand human beings that were infected. And it just goes on from there. There's a lot of crazy, great situations. The romantic love portion of this story, I thought, was integrated very well. There's somewhat of a love triangle that's happening here, but it's never obnoxious. The secondary love interest comes off as a real bitch in the first part of the story, and then you kind of learn and grow, and the character development for Shinichi is just really good. Really good. He's something of kind of a weakling kid, but he's good looking, but he's not really confrontational at all. He kind of but he has a very strong sense of justice and decency. But he struggles with different aspects, and him and Miggy struggle with each other. The best comparison I could find that I felt as I watched this series, the several times I've watched it, is if you ever saw the old 80s movie Enemy Mine, it comes off feeling very much like that. Two completely different races trying to understand and come to terms with each other. Both of them intelligent, both of them trying to survive and make it. It's just, but it comes off very much feeling like that back and forth between an enemy that's been basically thrust together, and they have to figure out how to coexist with each other, because if one dies, it's a possibility the other will die. They're dependent on each other, but they hate each other. So there's a definite conflict going on there between the two main characters of Shinichi and Miggy, the parasite that has taken him over. But I found this entire series to just be captivating, It's not the best anime I've ever seen, but it does very well. One of the only problems I saw with this particular series was the art style seems to be, it kind of goes back and forth between more of a modern style and yet something similar to older styles, such as what you would see in like Vampire Hunter D and other older animes. The artist in this, and this is something I've seen in Hayao Miyazaki's work with Studio Ghibli, is for some reason some of the Japanese animators really like draw the forehead for human beings differently. Whereas like they think that like people have extremely prominent foreheads in this at different points, and and it's not all the time, and the characters, like, it's like the art style is just like, for some reason that you'll see that a lot, you'll be like, why is her forehead suddenly so big, and now it's not, and now it looks normal. So it's just, there's just a kind of taste of that I've seen in other Japanese animation. So you will see a little bit of that, but overall I found the style to be very compelling. I found the action sequences, the high-speed animation parts, very well done. The characters are compelling. The parasites are very interesting characters as you learn and come to terms with more of them and some of the human interactions that you will see, the conflicts that come up. It is, and there's some really surprising characters that I didn't expect in something like this. There's basically a murderer that gets used because he can sense the presence of these monsters, what he terms as monsters, and he feels it's because he himself is a human monster, so he can spot other predators, basically, because he preys on human beings and knifes them and kills them and does terrible things, and so do these parasites, especially in the beginning. And so, I mean, his character is just, creepy, horrible, just scumbag of a character. But even he lends this air of uncertainty and mystery to why the aliens are there, what their purpose is, some of the conflicts. And this is very much a psychological exercise. Delving into the darkness that can be human beings and how they treat each other and our relationship with the earth that we live on, and like how that works. And it kind of goes back and forth with the discussion of predator and prey and who has the right to survive. But it is just a very well done, very thought out, fun series. That has some really fun animation styles, especially with Miggy and his hand, like his hand turning into eyeballs on these two fingers and basically bending backwards to look at him while they're talking and stretching across the room to go and, Miggy wants to be on the computer, and so Shinichi's laying in his bed and Miggy's over on the computer on the other side of the room, and it's just very interesting to see this love-hate, we depend on each other but we don't really like each other, don't really understand each other relationship between these two, and then how that affects Miggy's relationship with the other parasites, because not only are they predators of human beings, they're kind of aggressive to their own species, they kind of in a territorial way, for the most part, and they're trying to figure themselves out, figure the human beings out, and figure out what their purpose is, because they don't understand any of it. And so there's just a lot of mind-bending stuff without being overly obnoxious, not like psychedelic, but it's just, why do we do what we do? Why do we live the way we do? Why don't we kill other human beings? Why do we have the moral rules that we do? There's a lot of philosophical things happening up behind the scenes that are just really great. It reminds me of some of the other animes that I've watched that are kind of more adult focused storylines. And I just lost the name of the one. It was one that Adega Outlaw had suggested to me. Yeah, it's gone. It was right there on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, if I think of it, I'll let you know. But I mean, it just, you really have to think and pay attention to what's going on in this to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And it makes you ask yourself questions, which is something I like. So it's like what the old Star Trek used to do. Not anymore, because the new Star Trek is just terrible. But the old Star Trek made you question yourself, made you go, why do we do that? Why am I that way? And that was one of the great things about the old Star Trek, is it did that. Makes you think, makes you question your own perceptions about why we do what we do and who humanity really is. Anyway, I hope this has been fun for you guys. I tried to give you details without giving you too many details, because I want you to go and be able to enjoy this story and see it for what it is. If you've seen it, let me know and comment on what you thought of the series overall. There are some elements of it that are a little silly, but really not much. I mean, really not much at all. So, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. If you'd like a more kind of really nitty-gritty detailed review of this, I can do that. This is just basically a quick overview generalization for the basic story and where it goes. There are things going on throughout this entire thing where one of the parasites gets with another parasite and gets herself pregnant as an experiment, because she sees herself as more of a scientist, a parasite, and the complications that come with that, because their bodies are still human. So she's carrying a human child inside of a body that is being controlled by a parasite, and the moral issues and conundrums that come up from. I mean, there's just a lot of that kind of stuff in this anime that are going to make you go, ooh, you're going to feel a little uncomfortable and question, like, I'm not sure if that's okay or not. And that's what great storytelling does. It makes you ask yourself those deep moral questions. It makes you find out the whys that make humanity what it is. And looking at it from an outsider's perspective, which is what Miggy ends up being, the character that is the ultimate outsider, having to figure out humanity and figure himself out. So go give this a watch. Let me know what you think. And thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. And we will talk to you next time. Bye now.